Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film Church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Rhodes is the island of peace. I prefer war.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday, I'm Lewis.
And I'm Brandon.
And we are here to talk about movies. This is the first in a very special series of episodes where we're going to go through the filmography of Sergio Leone film by film, starting with the first film that he made all the way up until the last. There's only 7, so there's only going to be a 7-episode series letting you in behind the curtain. But normally, if you're new to the pod, each week Brandon and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. But like I said, for the next 7 episodes, it's all about Leone. Today, we are talking about Sergio's first credited work as a director from 1961, The Colossus of Rhodes.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's right. A film that you don't often hear mentioned in the same breath as Sergio Leone. I don't think it's not.
It's definitely his lowest rated movie of his filmography.
Yes. So a good place to start. If it, is technically the worst, in inverted commas, a good place to start the watch. But before we discuss the film, we would like to thank everyone that has been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. We love to hear from you all, and that people are even listening at all is a massive bonus to us. We just want to sit and talk about films together. So the fact that anyone's listening and enjoying is a huge bonus. If you want to get involved, you can follow us on all social media platforms at Film Church Radio. Send us any kind of comments, reviews that you've watched, any films you want us to watch. We'd love to hear from anyone. It's a community here at the Film Church Radio. We want to hear from everyone. We also have all our back episodes streaming on every platform, so you can go back and listen to all the other stuff that we've talked about, including Spider-Man spoiler specials, Morbius spoiler specials. We've talked about silent film, foreign film, American film.
Eventually we'll talk about it all.
That's right. So, yeah, that's all the intro bits out of the way. But before we get into the main meat of the episode, let's do our quick reviews. This is where Brandon and I just talk about what we've been watching this week, other than the film we're going to be discussing at length. Brandon, what have you been watching?
So I have watched no movies other than Severance. It's been a pretty... Severance. I've watched Severance, but it's not a movie. It's a show on Apple TV Plus, and the last episode just dropped a few days ago of the season.
Cool.
And it's been a busy week for me. I'm in the middle of trying to move.
Yeah.
And GTFO of Dallas.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to pretend that I'm happy that you're leaving. So
yeah, it's bittersweet for sure.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a much needed change, but there's been a lot of relationships built here in the area.
That's right.
But I mean, it's like we're not leaving forever.
Yeah.
We're not dying. We're just moving.
Yeah.
4 hours away.
Yeah.
Podcast will continue. We've already figured out how we're going to keep the show going, but I won't be able to just drive over here all the time. But we will make special trips.
That's right.
Do special episodes and just hang out.
Agreed.
But we did start this show Severance on Monday, and then watched the entire season by today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A few days ago. So,
that's quick. And how many episodes? Is it 6 or?
It's 9 episodes.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
And they're an hour each.
Oh, man.
So, we really, really liked the show. It stars Adam Scott.
Yeah.
Who my girlfriend loves him and everything. I mean, I love him and everything too.
Yeah.
I'm not. She always seeks out stuff that he's in.
As Stan.
As Stan.
Yeah, she stands him. Is that a thing?
She stalks him, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I would think ever since Parks and Rec,
yes,
which he was great in.
He was great in Parks and Rec.
As Ben Wyatt. And he's really good in everything I've ever seen him in, and he is really good in this show. And it's headed up by Ben Stiller, which he directs mostly episodes, but it's very much not what you would think of something that Ben Stiller would do, because it's not like a comedy; it's very serious. And it's so good. It's one of the best like first seasons I've seen in a really long time. I mean, there's a lot of really, really good TV out there right now, obviously, but I think this is just a little bit above some of the other ones I've seen in recent years, just because of how invested and intense I feel watching the episodes. But it's only on Apple TV Plus, so you have to have that. But I think it's only like $5 a month or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to definitely check it out. I've been watching mostly TV too. I mean, we both watched Moon Knight, which we can talk a little bit spoiler free. I don't think anything. This may be a spoiler, but I don't think anything's happened of note as of yet.
Yeah.
I really like it. I'm into my Egyptian lore anyway. So as soon as it was like, oh, he's kind of from ancient Egypt, I was like, okay, I'm in. This is cool.
Did you know anything about Moon Knight going into?
Not a thing.
Yeah, me either.
Which is which I like. I was saying to Chelsea, my wife, that this is like the first, apart from maybe the Eternals, the first Marvel show, especially show, but character in general, that I'm going in completely blind.
Yeah,
I would say. And I liked it a lot. I mean, Oscar Isaac is brill. I think he really kind of carries it. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they've got Ethan Hawke.
It's kind of crazy that they've got Ethan Hawke, because it seems like Ethan Hawke is the kind of person that would never do MCU. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, he's always doing like more independent, intellectual kind of stuff. Yeah. And it seems like he's also the kind of person that would kind of look down on like the superhero genre. Yeah.
But he's doing it. I mean,
he's doing it. So he's not necessarily like that, or maybe he just needed that paycheck. I'm sure is nice.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I mean, the other thing is like playing a villain is, I mean, we don't know how it's going to end, but you're pretty much guaranteed to be one and done as a villain.
Yeah, that's true.
So he can like, go in, collect this paycheck and be like, I did it.
Yeah. I've experienced it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit more grittier than what we've seen. I mean, I know we talked about Morbius and the fact that it needs to be a little bit more R-rated. And I feel like this is the way Moon Knight's going. I mean, there was, in the first episode, there was more blood than I think we've seen in a Marvel film. Yeah. Which is probably good. Yeah. I want it to, not every superhero can be kind of PG-13, right?
Right. Well, it's definitely interesting to see where they go from here, because they own these other properties that were technically made by other people, but are now a part of the MCU, like Daredevil and Punisher, which Punisher is very dark, and I would say even controversial for the MCU. Yeah. And then also like Deadpool, like they're working on Deadpool 3. What's that going to look like? Yeah. Probably like Deadpool 2, but like MCU, exactly. Kevin Feige, on the producer role. So it's an interesting time, but it's like they need to go there. It's like, where are they going to go next? They have to, and their audience is growing up too. Because if you were a child when even Iron Man came out, you're not anymore.
No, exactly. I mean, 2008. So, yeah. Right. So it's already 15 years old.
Getting there, yeah.
So,
I guess it is. Yeah. Wow.
I know, oh crazy, God. Right?
Jeez.
Yeah, it's insane. But yeah, I want them to go dark. I want them to do more adult themed. I think WandaVision was maybe the first small step, because it wasn't a superhero show. It was a very personal, like, you know,
It was
loved
about
it.
dealing with grief.
Yeah.
You know, which
Yeah.
is
an adult issue. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know many kids that could kind of relate, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, Moon Knight's been really good. I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think it's only 6 episodes.
Yeah.
So we're already a third of the way through.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I know the character at all. But the only 2 films that I've really watched, I watched Easy Rider. Recently bought the Criterion box set that includes Easy Rider and Last Picture Show and some of the kind of earlier new Hollywood that was breaking through. I hadn't seen Easy Rider for a while, so I rewatched it, and it's so much better than I remember it being.
Yeah.
It's just so intoxicating to watch. You know, it's kind of very lazily.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, it's good.
So-
It's very lazily kind of put together. There's a lot of shots of them kind of driving their bikes or riding their bikes, I guess, through
It's
America.
not a documentary, is it?
It isn't. No, it is a narrative. But it's very. It's just like you kind of fall into it. It's very easy to watch. You know, there's not a huge amount happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really really good. I really enjoyed it.
I've got to watch it. I mean, it's one of those films that I hear about all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, 1969, right?
yeah,
And yeah, there's just so many. Well, I talk about the 70s a lot. Like the 70s to me feels like when cinema really found its footing, I guess, at least in America.
yeah.
And
It was like a rebirth.
yeah, exactly. And like I think that, you know, they're like Easy Rider is one of those films that kind of set the tone for everything that came after.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching one of the like documentaries that included on the Blu-ray, and I think it was Dennis Hopper that was like, it was either men in suits, like with trilbies, or it was kids on a beach, like very kind of like, you know, Elvis.
Yeah.
That was the only 2 depictions of men that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like a very kind of countercultural, like representation of a minority, I guess, in the US government. And it is like watching a time capsule. It's like watching something from, you know, like it is like watching a documentary.
Yeah, just because it's a time that's gone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and there's a very young Jack Nicholson in it. That is.
Oh, really? I didn't even know he was in it.
He's so great. As soon as he comes in, you just like, you can tell that he's got that movie star charisma.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I watched Easy Rider again, which I loved. And then I watched Red Rocket, which came out last year, had quite a lot of buzz.
Shot on 16mm film.
Yes, by the same guy that did Florida Project, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And it was really good. It was good. It tells a story about an out of work porn star who kind of comes back to his Texas hometown, and kind of I don't know, he's looking for a way to rebuild his image, I guess.
Yeah.
I do feel like the director, I forget his name, I mean, he did Tangerine, a film called Tangerine before Florida Project, and it's a lot about sex workers.
Yeah.
You know, every film seems to be about a sex worker in a different kind of field.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Sean Baker.
That's it. And then the story is entertaining enough, but I want to see, you know,
See him do something else.
yeah, just kind of a different character that's not involved in the sex industry. But I don't know. That seems to be where his representation, like that's the kind of culture he wants to talk about. You know, the people that he wants to talk about, which is fair enough. And I mean, if he keeps making films as enjoyable and as entertaining as Red Rocket, then I'm all for it. Because it was really good. I did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna watch it at some
Good.
point.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, Simon Rex, who plays the main guy, he is excellent. You know, he's just
yeah, it seemed like he was getting a lot of buzz, but he
Yeah.
didn't get nominated for best actor. That movie didn't get nominated for anything, did it?
not the Oscars. I was talking to Zach, our friend Zach, who's been on the show, and he was saying that the Independent Spirit Awards, he won Best Actor.
Okay.
So, you know, in the kind of more underground, I guess, like the indie awards, it did pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a shame that he wasn't nominated. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you could easily have slipped him in there. You know, it was a great performance.
Yeah.
So,
It feels like Hollywood is shying away from sex in some ways.
Yes, it's funny you say that because Sight and Sound, the magazine I love, they did a big piece on Red Rocket, and the director Sean Baker said that himself. He said that, you know, Hollywood's it's okay to show incredible violence, but it won't show sex.
Yeah.
And it's like it doesn't translate.
Yeah.
Like we're still, as in a culture, prudish towards sex.
Yeah, because literally we will show the most violent thing ever.
Yeah.
And people will be, oh, yeah, it's fine. I mean, you think about like even movies like sometimes they can be controversial, obviously. I don't know why I said it like that. Obviously movies can be controversial. But like thinking about like something like The Passion of the Christ, where it's like so violent, but everybody's like, you have to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know. Anyway, it's like as a culture, as an American culture, we're okay with violence.
And I feel like Red Rocket, to someone that wouldn't necessarily know the story, would know it would be about sex. Same with, you know.
Yeah, I didn't even know, like seeing the trailer, I was like, this looks really good. I had no idea it was about a guy that was in the sex industry.
Yeah. It's really worth a watch. And I think it's coming to UK cinemas soon as well. So if you're in the UK, hopefully get a chance to see it soon.
I will not be.
No, you'll be in Austin, but I think it's available to rent here, so we get it early because America.
Yeah. America is America.
That's right, yeah. Talking of America, this film that we're going to talk about today takes place in Greece. So we're going to move on to the first film of our special Sergio Leone series, The Colossus of Rhodes, from 1961. His first credited directorial feature.
That's right.
Boom. 1 of 7.
Yeah, apparently he had, we were talking about him a little bit before the show. I've started his biography, but I've only read one chapter.
Yeah, Brandon bought it, and you literally had to drag it through the door. It's so thick.
It is a big, dense book.
Yes.
But it's going to be fun going through his filmography, I think, because, it's going to build on itself, right? We're going to learn more and more about this guy and about his movies and what we feel about his movies. But I don't remember where I was going with that, but I don't know.
Well, I'm going in blind. I've never seen any of his films.
Yeah, I am excited about that because you've never seen any of his films. I've seen, now I've seen The Colossus of Rhodes, but before that I have seen A Fistful of Dollars, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Once Upon a Time in America, which, if you don't know, most everybody I'm sure has heard of The Good, the Bad, the Ugly.
Yeah.
Which I had, heard of for years, but I had seen The Good, the Bad, the Ugly first, I think, and didn't realize that A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More were actually
like a trilogy. First,
that it was a trilogy, and that those two movies were 1 and 2, and The Good and the Bad and the Ugly was the third movie, because you can watch The Good and the Bad and the Ugly, and you don't need to see the other movies, I don't feel like.
Yeah.
But I've never seen the second one, actually.
Sweet.
So,
okay, cool.
Yeah. It'll be nice to complete those. But he got his start, like his father was a filmmaker, worked in the film industry, and his mother.
Yeah.
And they were pretty old when they had him. Like, she was in her 40s and he was almost 50.
Yeah.
When he was born. So his parents were much older than he was, and in his biography it says that was like kind of one of his biggest regrets, was that like his parents, or mainly his father, never saw his success.
Yeah. Wow.
Especially both of his parents coming from the film industry, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those things where, I mean, because I haven't obviously read the biography, unfortunately, but I did read some from like Wikipedia and stuff like that. And it's one of those things where, like, when you read about how he kind of got started, you're like, of course he was destined for great things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, he was pretty much born into the film industry, you know, and like learn life through it.
Yeah.
I gathered. So
yeah, but then also experienced some intense things in his childhood because he was a child when World War II was going on, and Italy was occupied by the Nazis for a full year. I think from like 33 to 34. Yeah, I think is right. You know, and he was a kid then. Yeah, you know, and I don't know exactly what context, you know, where that fits into the rest of his story because I haven't gotten through his biography yet. But I assume that you know must have had a big impact.
I mean, again, this is why this kind of stuff works so well, is that in future films you can look for themes of like occupation, you know, themes of these tyrannies kind of taking over places, you know. I mean, Colossus of Rhodes, right? I mean, you can already see those seeds being planted. Wow, that's super interesting. I mean, and he is a filmmaker that is one of the most influential.
Yeah, people talk about him all the time. Yeah.
And to say, like, I was so surprised that it was only 7. Yeah. You know, like, to make that much. I mean, Tarantino has got his big thing about he's only making 10 films. Leone did it in 7. Yeah. Right? I mean, he left a legacy that's going to live past all of us. Yeah. In these 7 films. And so that's why we're starting at the very beginning. Yeah. The Colossus of Rhodes from 1961. The IMDb summary is, while holidaying in Rhodes, an Athenian war hero becomes involved in 2 plots to overthrow the tyrannical king. One from Rhodian patriots and the other from sinister Phoenician agents. Dun, dun, dun. Yes. And this Athenian war hero is played by Rory Calhoun. Who, me and Brandon have been talking about Rory Calhoun because Brandon asked me, have you ever seen Rory Calhoun in anything? And I was for sure that I hadn't. And then when I checked letterboxed, he had been in 2 Marilyn Monroe films that I've seen. Which are? How to Marry a Millionaire and...
Another one.
And another one. Yes.
I think I've only seen Some Like It Hot as far as Marilyn Monroe goes, which is one of the I was probably one of her most famous ones.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is a great movie. I watched it last year.
Yeah, like Jello on Springs. I just remember that line when they watch her walk through the train station. It's so good. So I thought my only memory of Rory Calhoun was from a Simpsons joke that I showed you. Yeah. As soon as he got here. Which is basically, I mean, really quick. It's so funny. Mr. Burns basically kidnaps all these dogs, and one of them stands on its hind legs.
I've never seen anything so adorable. You know who it reminds me of?
Snoop Doggy Dogg? Bob Barker? David Brenner?
No. The person who's always standing and walking.
Rory Calhoun?
That's it.
So they call him Rory Calhoun because this dog stands on his legs, which I find incredibly funny. It's so absurd and
it's
ridiculous.
So random. It's like who in the show was like, this is going to be hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, when I think of Rory Calhoun, I think of a puppy standing on his hind legs. But he stars in the Colossus of Rhodes, and it's a Sand and Sandal epic in the vein of Ben-Hur, 10 Commandments, El Cid, all those kind of
it definitely reminded me of like a biblical epic.
Yes.
And I was kind of surprised when I got, like, after I watched the movie, because I really enjoyed the movie a lot.
Yeah, me too.
And
it's a blast.
When I got on Letterboxd, you know, the average rating was like 2.7.
Yeah.
And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Because I had a blast watching this movie.
Yeah.
And I think the low rating is because people are comparing this movie to other Sergio Leone movies, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas they should be comparing this movie to other movies of this genre,
Yeah.
to other biblical epics, to other Sand and
Sandal. Yeah.
Sandal.
Yeah.
I thought, or is it Sword and Sandal?
Is it Sword and Sandal?
I feel like it's Sword and Sandal.
That
Maybe
sounds
it's Sand
more-
and Sandal. I don't know.
Sword, Sandal.
There are
and sandal.
swords, sands, and sandals.
A mixture of any of those three. Take your pick.
Yeah.
You can have 2, you can have 3, you can have more.
But yeah, they should be comparing it to other movies like, of this genre, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like when you do that, I feel like this is one of the best
Yeah.
Roman epics that I've
Yeah.
seen.
I've been dreading watching this film. Like to start off with, because the Sword, Sand, and Sandal epics, which is now how we're going to coin it, I am not a fan of at all. I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really don't enjoy the kind of, the Ben-Hur, El Cid.
You've seen Ben-Hur?
Yes, and I've seen El Cid, which seemed to go on forever.
Mm-hmm.
If the lecturer that showed us that in the class is listening, I apologize because I said I liked it at the time. But yeah, I've just never been into it, so
Yeah,
I was dreading it.
Ben-Hur, I'm kind of on the fence about. Like, I watched it as a kid more than once, and I never was like in love with it, I guess.
Yeah,
But the Ten Commandments, I don't know what it is about that movie. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I've always really liked it.
yeah,
I even thought about getting a tattoo of like the cover
that's awesome.
of Moses holding the Ten Commandments when he's about to like throw it down on the people. And
That's so cool. Yeah,
so yeah, I like that movie, and that's the movie that this movie feels like the most to me because
Okay.
it's in that genre, right?
yeah,
But the action in this movie feels kind of dialed up to me.
yeah,
Like, even though it's still cheesy, it's not realistic or whatever.
yeah.
But it feels more intense.
Mhm.
I like the actors are selling it more.
Yeah,
There's no blood or anything, but it
Yeah.
feels like they're really in it.
yeah, exactly. I really like these kind of films that, especially like The Mummy, the Brendan Fraser Mummy from like the 90s, where they take historical things, like Imhotep was a real person, but then they just do their own thing.
Yeah.
They're like, this is completely fiction.
Yeah,
We're just borrowing these things.
yeah.
Because the Colossus of Rhodes was,
Like one of the 7 wonders of the world, right?
yeah, exactly. But this film is like, that is the basis. We're going to do this huge, set
Epic around
piece around it. And yeah, I think that we both had the same reaction when we first like talked about it. It's like if you were a kid, this film would be rad. You would
Yeah.
love this film.
Yeah.
It's so over the top. Like, everything is so like memorable.
Yeah.
Like, I could imagine if I had seen this at 7 years old, I wouldn't remember the film. I would remember him fighting on swords on top of the Colossus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because it's so, I mean, when that popped up, I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, just from a standpoint, like, I love how it was like silhouetted
Mhm.
against like the kind of dark blue sky. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those movies that I think, yeah, same. Like, while I was watching it, I was like, this is a boy movie.
Yeah.
It's not like, a man movie necessarily. It's like a boy movie. Like,
Mhm.
I would have, it's not that I didn't enjoy it as a man. I did a lot, but it made me feel like I did when I was like a boy.
Yeah.
Right? It
Mhm.
made me feel like I did watching the Ten Commandments or watching Star Wars for the first time as a young boy. And yeah, I think if one night my dad was like, we're watching the Ten Commandments again, and then pulled out this instead, I would have been blown away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, there's obviously, I think there's areas that could be improved for sure. I don't think it's a 5-star masterpiece.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it was necessarily trying to be.
No.
It was like it knew what it was. You know.
Yeah.
It felt like Sergio Leone knew the genre he was working with and knew what it was going to look like and kind of dialed those things in and up because he did work on Ben-Hur.
He did, yeah,
as a second unit director apparently.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he was just absorbing all of the workings on set, right?
Yeah.
Watching the director, watching the actors, watching how a big epic set piece of this design is put together, and then knew how he would, probably saw a few things, was like, I would do it this way, I would dial this up, and that didn't come out quite good enough. So
yeah, before this, I was reading before we came on that he finished the directing of the film The Last Days of Pompeii when the director fell ill, and basically kind of got this position as director of the Colossus of Rhodes because he could bring an epic of this, of Ben-Hur's kind of the same look, I guess, and feel for a lower budget. Because he had finished The Last Days of Pompeii, I guess, like either under budget or like within the budget. And I don't think you would be able to tell that this was like a cut budget film, like a lower budget kind of epic.
No, it feels very high budget.
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of money went into this.
I mean, the Colossus itself, never once does it look like fake.
Cheap.
Yeah. Because I was expecting, we would zoom out and it would just look like a painted statue, or, just look like a backdrop or whatever. But it always looks legit.
Yeah.
It's a very impressive set piece for sure.
It always looks 2,500 years old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But there's a lot that happens in this film.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. I think, if you want to figure out what's going on in this movie, like you have to pay a lot of attention to it. I watched it like first waking up in the morning, made a cup of coffee, and just sat down and watched it. No one watched it with me. I was wearing headphones, and I followed it all. Like I was very intensely involved in, like, I kept expecting to get bored.
Yeah.
Because this is the kind of movie you feel like you might get bored with at some point. And like and Ben-Hur and the 10 Commandments, I'll admit, even though I like the 10 Commandments, like there's parts where you're going to get bored.
Yeah.
Right? Where the dialogue just draws out too long or the scene goes on too long. But this movie, I felt like there was never a moment where I was like uninterested in where it was going, because it took so many twists that I was like, oh, now it's kind of a different movie.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's kind of another movie. Like, where is this going? I was never like ahead of it.
Yeah.
Especially, I think where it first got really interesting for me was when he is the main character, Rory Calhoun.
That's right.
Is
all standing, all walking.
Always standing and walking. He's standing and walking towards this woman, one of the love interests, and he's like trying to get with her, and she's like, she's playing hard to get, and she like runs off. And then he's got to go like find her. And then he goes into a tomb. And the way the tone changes in that moment, I was like, this is really interesting. Like it just all of a sudden got way creepy. More interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But even that, it almost felt like, okay, now this movie could go in a totally different, like really dark, like, Evil Dead spirits coming out.
Yeah.
Like who knows? Like it felt like it could go in that direction. And it stays in that little that kind of dark spiritual tone for maybe like 5 minutes, and then goes on to something else.
Yeah.
And lots of times this movie does that, where it switches the tone at the right moment. Like before you're ready to get bored.
Yeah.
It's like, here's something else interesting.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think even in the early scene where they're doing a lot of exposition, you know, you're meeting the king, Cersei, and kind of you're meeting, is it Dario? Rory Calhoun's character?
Dario.
You're meeting them at the beginning, and then all of a sudden an assassin kind of breaks from the crowd to try and kill Cersei.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just as that exposition is kind of like, okay, like, we know who you are now, you know, and then it's like, boom, someone tries to kill him, and then they move to a party where there's more exposition. Someone tries to kill him again, and it's very well paced. I mean, to say that there is pretty much like Rhodes is destroyed at one point, hundreds of people get killed, there's lava dropping on people, you know, it's a lot that happens in 2 hours and 9 minutes, but I still think that parts of it could be trimmed. I don't think it necessarily needed all that for it to work. You know, they are added bonuses, but I don't think it necessarily needed it. I mean, I guess they wanted the Colossus to fall at the end of the film.
Yeah.
So that was the way that they did it, you know, to destroy the whole of Rhodes and stuff, but it didn't necessarily need that bit.
Yeah, it didn't necessarily need it, I guess. It was very interesting for me, the way that this film ended, because, I mean, they did allude to it early on when Dario and his uncle are in their sleeping quarters, and there's a storm, and his uncle says, here at the center of the sea, Rhodes is at the mercy of the elements, my boy. You know, so they hint to like, you know, a hurricane or a big storm could destroy this whole place. And he even goes further with it. Like he says, the architects built my room. It's the safest.
Yeah.
In the whole, you know, in all of Rhodes or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, they hint to it there, and then they bring it back towards the end, and there's a huge storm, and it just literally destroys everything, which is also interesting because it's like, with all the different plot twists in this movie, if you think about it, if none of those things happened, that storm would still come and destroy everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they'd just be like, oh, what's happening?
Yeah. So literally, you know, maybe all the prisoners still would have gotten out. Maybe, you know, the king still would have died.
But I did think that, I mean, so Darius is from Greece.
Uh-huh.
Is this some kind of Greek mythology? You know, Zeus, and is that what it is like they're
based on?
Yeah, are they assisting him to kind of claim Rhodes again?
Maybe. Yeah, like he's like supposed to be Hercules, or he's,
yeah,
you know.
Because as soon as he was like tied up and stuff, that's when it started to, you know, they're like, guess we've got to step in now, you know.
Yeah.
All standing or walking can't do it himself.
I mean, I would imagine that it's a lot of it is tied to, you know, some kind of mythology or biblical text or something. You know, it'll be interesting to learn more about Sergio and where his influences came from. I mean, like we already said, he worked on Ben-Hur, so he could be pulling from all these other things that he worked on, you know, good story points and stuff. Because him and another person wrote this film, so he was one of the writers.
Yeah, I mean, it was credited to 4, but what I read was that there were actually 9.
Yeah, I did read that too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So that's
So it seems more like I mean, that again, I read that before I watched it, and again I was like, it's just going to be like a paint by numbers, you know. It's one of those things with too many cooks, you know, all these people in to just churn out a sword, sand, and sandal epic.
Yeah, it's like it's one of those movies that has probably only benefited from age.
Yes, I know what you mean. Yeah, I do wonder that if anyone else other than Leone had directed it, would we have ever seen this film? Or would it have just been lost to public broadcast television and, in an archive somewhere? Because it is the kind of film that, especially in England, would be on a Saturday afternoon on like the, Channel 4, Channel 5.
Right.
That if you were flicking through, you'd be like, oh, this is interesting. But you wouldn't be like, oh, they're showing the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah. Yeah. But also, I mean, I'm sure it just felt, at the time that it came out, just felt similar to so many other things of the time.
Because I don't think
things that people had already seen.
I don't necessarily.
There's no like big star power in it. It's not Charlton Heston in the film.
Yeah,
it's Rory Calhoun. Just standing and walking.
Yeah, because I was thinking when I was watching it, is there any? I mean, because I love Hitchcock, so when you think of his earlier films, not necessarily his first film, but if you think of like The Lodger, which is pretty famous, like there's a lot of touches there that are Hitchcockian that you can see what will later become his trademarks. In those films, especially in The Lodger. And I was watching this and I was like, it is like a huge spectacle. It's done really well, but I wouldn't necessarily be like, this is an auteur at work. This is a director that knows what he wants to put on the screen, and that's what he's achieving. Yeah. It's kind of...
Well, it felt, we said this before the show, it felt like someone's playing with action figures.
I love that description. I was going to say it earlier, but I was like, I love that so much that I want you to say it. Okay. Because I don't want to steal it. But it is. Yeah. It's just someone having a blast with these characters.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with all the plot twists. Yeah. Because it's like, you're playing this scene that you love, and then all of a sudden, they're in a tomb, in an ancient tomb with, these dead kings, and then all of a sudden there's lions. And then all of a sudden, this guy's trying to overthrow the government. And then all of a sudden, your girlfriend's the bad guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's hot lava being poured on people.
Yeah, and then they're fighting on the head of...
of the statue.
That opens up and lava is flung out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that, just in reading the first chapter of Sergio Leone's biography is... it sounds like he had a film that he wanted to make his whole life that he never made, which was basically the story of his life. Wow. And the story of him and his like kind of gang of friends when they were younger, and they would go watch movies all the time together and stuff. And he was always reaching for that, trying to make that story, and then elements of that story always wound up in each of these films.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool.
And this kind of feels like, kind of the start of that, right? It's kind of like, it feels like a group of friends, maybe 9.
Yeah.
Or 9 writers, each doing their little part. It's like, okay, now it's your turn to tell your part of the story. Yeah. And it's like, well, this goes over here. And then like by the time that friend ends, and it's ready for the next friend, now they have to pick it up, and then they take it in a totally different direction, right? Yeah. It kind of feels like that. But it's amazing that, you would expect that would just be chaotic, but there is a symmetry to it. Yeah. That I think makes it a level above some of these other films, because it ties back together, and it's still cheesy. You got to suspend your disbelief or whatever. Like we said, it's a boy movie. It's not, you're not meant to take it super seriously, but it's really well done.
Yeah, like, it's tight. Yeah. Yeah. It's it comes out, at the end of it, you're like, I've had a really good few hours. That was a good way to pass the time. Yeah. And it's the kind of thing that you can imagine, like you said, 9-year-old boys in the cinema in 1961, like whooping and cheering and, coming away being like, I've seen the best film ever made. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that in that way, it works. I don't think it's reaching for, immortality in cinema. It's it did what it said it was going to do.
It wasn't like Sergio Leone was like, okay, now I have my chance. I'm going to be the next Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, I'm going to make a movie.
I'm going to make it well.
I'm going to make it well. I'm going to get it under budget.
Yeah.
I'm going to have some fun and we're just going to make a good movie.
And see what happens next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah. I agree.
Didn't think too much of it.
I'm really glad that we watched it though, because I do feel that if I was doing a rewatch or if I was just watching these films myself, I'm a completist, so I would have watched it, but I would have been very tempted to skip forward one.
During the movie?
Or just before. Just be like...
I was just like, watch the other movies.
Yeah,
and then...
I could watch Colossus of Rhodes, but I could also watch Fistful of Dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And be like, oh, I'm going to go for Fistful of Dollars. I've heard more about that or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I think it is a good... I mean, it is a good place to start, for sure.
The beginning is always a good place to start.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, like definitely. Like I feel like I mean I've already seen some of his other films, right? Yeah. So I do have kind of a prediction of what it's going to feel like by the end of this. And especially after watching this, because this, like we've said, it feels like a boy movie. Like this is the kind of movie that I would tell my brothers who have young sons, like watch this with your boys, you know, before they get to the age where they're like, I want to watch The Matrix or I want to watch, you know, Deadpool or like these R-rated movies. Like before they get to that age, watch this movie with them.
Yeah.
Like this is a good father-son sit down on a Saturday or Friday night or whatever movie, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think a lot of these movies in Sergio Leone's filmography are going to be like that. You know, barely getting into his biography, you know, learning that like one of his biggest regrets was like that his father was so much older than he was, and you know, died when he was, you know, he was like only 20 something. You know, that he didn't really get to have those moments. It's interesting that you know, some of the movies he made are like father-son bonding movies. And not in the way where like the subject matter is about a father and son.
No.
You know, it's like it's something that you would want to watch with your son. You know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah. He's not dealing with daddy issues, he's dealing with like lack of time.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So I think his movies are gonna grow up.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so cool.
Can't wait. Jinx. Yeah, because this was so fun, man. Like literally, I did not expect to like this movie so much.
No, me neither. I mean, it kind of like I said, it starts off and I feel like you're immediately in it. I don't feel like there was much like to put you off. I mean, but from what you were saying, it to me it epitomizes the rainy Sunday afternoon film. It's the kind of you know, John Ford westerns are normally my go-to, but maybe it should be Sand and Sandals, you know, these kind of films for a rainy Sunday afternoon, because they're so fun to watch. There's a lot going on. There's these big set pieces, and in the end, it's not, you know what's going to happen. You know who's going to win the day. So it's not, you know, surprising.
Yeah, it's you know, it's funny because there was a couple of moments in the movie too that where it did subvert my expectation a lot.
Yeah,
because you know, you kind of do the hero of the film is pretty obvious, but then there's a moment where he's trying to escape on a boat, and they drop down a fiery, just like a big fiery bomb onto the boat, and literally the shot is just the fire comes down on the boat, and the boat is just covered in fire.
Yeah, I was like,
and
well,
you know, the main character is just standing right on the boat.
Yeah,
But then so I was like, oh, they just pulled a Psycho. They just killed the main character.
Yeah.
We're like 40 minutes into the movie. But then they cut to the deck of the boat, and he's like, fine. And he's like, everybody jump.
There's just a few fires on board.
Yeah. And then they did it again when in that scene that you were talking about where they're fighting on the Colossus, on the arm and the neck of the statue. And then he just like falls off.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there he goes. But then I like forgot that there's like water underneath him. So he just like falls in the water.
Yeah.
They're like, he got away. So you should have just jumped down on top of him with your sword.
What did you think to the all standing, all walking Rory Calhoun? Did you like him in this?
I did. I liked everybody in this. I think like nobody felt out of place. He's somebody I've never seen him in anything.
Yeah,
and he wasn't I don't think he was a bad actor.
No,
I mean everybody in this movie is dubbed. I'm pretty sure that this film was shot originally in the Italian language and then dubbed for every other.
Well, we said it seemed like half and half. Like his and a few of the other kind of characters, you could tell it was still dubbed, but it was like moving with their mouths.
Yeah,
and then one of the love interests and the main general, I can't remember his name. They both were heavily dubbed, like you could tell.
Yeah. So do you think maybe Rory Calhoun was like just said his lines in English and then they dubbed him in Italian and everybody else was actually Italian?
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible
because they like needed a star and he was like somebody from America or something. Maybe
I'm sure
we're just theorizing.
Yeah, potentially. I'm sure maybe it could be a whole thing about the levels, like to make sure that everybody sounded the same. They had to dub everybody's voice if they were dubbing just the Italians. Like if people were speaking at the same time, you couldn't dub over. You would need to kind of isolate the vocal tracks or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they just needed to dub everybody.
Yeah.
So he was saying his lines in English, they were saying it in Italian.
Right. Yeah.
And then they just dubbed everybody.
Yeah.
Is what I would assume. But it's noticeable.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was filmed in Italy, right?
Yeah.
So
as far as I know.
Yeah. So I'm sure that, quite a lot of the people were Italian and used.
Yeah. So what did we're trying something new, ladies and gentlemen, where I want to try and guess what each of us rated this movie on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Because Lewis and I both use Letterboxd. If you don't know what that is, it's basically social media for film lovers.
Yeah.
And you can log and rate movies that you watch, keep a film diary. That's the biggest thing that I use it for is the film diary, because I can, anytime I watch a movie, I can log it and rate it. And then at the end of the year, I can look and see all the movies I watched that year. How many movies did I watch in November? It's very interesting for that.
I am obsessed with it.
With Letterboxd?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. As soon as I found it, maybe 6-7 years ago, I have been addicted.
Yeah.
I love the fact that, because as you know, I love physical media. I collect films. And this is a virtual space for me to put everything that I watch, not just the films I own on DVD, but everything I watch down.
Yeah. And films you want to watch, and then you can rate. Reviews, you can make lists.
Yeah.
You can rate all the MCU movies from your favorite one to your least favorite one,
which I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, what on Letterboxd?
Yeah.
Do you think that I rated this film?
Are we each going to say what we think and then reveal? I think you rated it 4 out of 5.
Okay.
What did you think I rated it?
I think you rated it 3.5.
Okay. You are correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Am I wrong?
I heavily yes. I heavily
It's 2.
no. I kept going back and forth. It was like if I was gonna give it a 4.5 or a 4.
You gave it
And
4.5?
I gave it 4.5.
Oh,
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that was my first instinct when
Yeah.
the movie was over.
Yeah.
And I didn't start considering giving it a 4 until I started reading reviews and seeing what other people
Yeah.
rated it. But I'm like, I should
My
give
initial,
it what
yeah.
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 And, I think watching it again, I might rate it a 4.
Yeah.
Just because I've already experienced it. But the
Yeah.
first experience was a 4.5 for me.
That's awesome.
It could go up, if someday
Yeah.
I have a son and I'm like, let's
Yeah.
watch this. And then
It's
he
all
has a
about
blast.
environment, right?
Or if he's like, I hated that. Why'd
Yeah.
you make me watch that? Then I might be like, that was a 2.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, this is not what I remember.
I mean, I gave it
It's
3.5.
like, show me Pulp Fiction again.
Yeah. I love how in this fantasy you've shown your son Pulp Fiction
Already.
before 9. Yeah. Yeah, I think that it was so enjoyable. I loved it. I just don't think that it would enter into like my classics.
Yeah.
And anything 4-star, 4.5, 5 is like my bona fide. I will watch this again.
Yeah.
I love this movie. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah.
Whereas, as we said, I'm like, boys would love this movie.
Yeah.
But it's 3.5 is still like really good.
Yeah. No,
I gave
for sure.
Morbius 0.5 star.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I think for me, the reason I'm giving it such a high rating is because of the way that it made me feel. Like
Yeah, that's great.
it took me back.
That's awesome.
It took
Yeah.
me to a time where I could watch it through the context of my younger self and
Yeah.
really enjoy it.
That's awesome. I
Made
love
me feel
that.
like a kid again.
Yeah.
Like I was playing with action figures,
Man, that's such a great
which
reason.
are boy Barbies.
Yeah. We all used to do it, dude. Like,
I
bit of a
play with
tangent.
Barbies too. So
Me and a friend of mine, we played with they were like action men, they were like G.I. Joes.
yeah,
We had a storyline that went for like 3 years.
yeah.
We would be like, okay, we'll end it there. We'll see you tomorrow. And then we'd pick right back up and we'd do like, if we didn't like the way something went, we'd be like, okay, we're going to go
Rewrite.
back, cut. We're going to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
So,
Did you ever write any of that down?
no,
That would be epic.
I
if you
know,
did.
dude. There was times when I was like, we should film it.
Yeah,
And we never did. And it's like
Yeah.
my biggest regret
yeah,
because I would we still talk about it all the time. We still remember kind of like what happened and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like,
maybe you could. Maybe the two of you could actually go back and like write that out.
yeah, it was
New HBO Max
full on.
series.
Yeah, dude. There would be a lot of copyright infringements because we weren't creative. We had
You
like
just stole
Star
Pete.
Wars.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had an evil cousin. This is going to sound ridiculous. Like, this is a full tangent. He had an evil cousin that was, for some reason, King of Egypt, but it was Obi-Wan Kenobi from The Phantom Menace. And he's just called Obi.
you could just change the names though.
Yeah,
But
but he's Obi, dude. That's what we called him. It was bizarre. And
Yeah.
he literally, there was one point where we killed him off and it lasted for a year. We're like, he's dead now. And we just didn't touch him. And then a year later, we're like, we're going to bring him back. It was
love
like
that.
it was like a full soap opera action. It was insane.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah,
But see, you can't. You can't replace that.
No,
You
exactly.
can't- there's
Yeah.
only certain things that could take you back to feeling that way.
And the other thing about these movies is this film is never going to be made again.
No. Yeah.
You're never going to get this type of film. I don't think nowadays.
No.
Like the kind of
You
it's-
got Exodus, right? Gods and
Yeah.
Kings that Ridley Scott did. That was
yeah, but just the vibrant the color is so saturated in these films.
Mm-hmm.
Like the costumes are so ridiculously small. Like, you know, it's so of a time.
Yeah.
Yeah, films like this always kind of. I'm so glad they're like 30s gangster films. You know, you could recreate it, but it's not going to be the same. This is of a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And especially when it's a good one, it's so enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, what a place to start. I think, you know, it's like you said, it's just a rip-roaring blast with the stand-in and walk-in Rory Calhoun.
Yeah, man. It's only going to get better from here, dude. I cannot wait.
That's awesome.
For the next movies. And your reactions from them.
Yeah.
Because, they only get better from here. Ennio Morricone, as a composer on the rest of his films, who I believe was one of those childhood buddies of his. As far as I know, you know, I'll confirm that as I read the book. But, yeah, man, it's only bigger and better.
That's awesome. I cannot wait. And I think that this is, as we said at the top, such a, you know, not widely talked about, and the fact we had such a blast with it, I'm like, if this is like, you know, the bum note of the career, what's the high note going to be like?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so excited to see what's next. And speaking of what's next, what is next?
Next, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already figured it out by getting on IMDb and looking at the filmography of Sergio Leone, it is Fistful of Dollars, starring Clint Eastwood. Which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, your first movie was this. Your second one, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
But he's kind of the one that did put Clint Eastwood on the map, which is kind of crazy. Like, when you think about Clint Eastwood, you think about America.
Yeah.
You know, you think about a old school classic American actor.
Yeah.
You know. But he became famous from being in 3 Italian films.
Crazy. Starting next week.
Yeah.
Because we did, I mean, you can go back and listen to our Play Misty For Me episode where we talked a little bit about Clint.
Or a lot.
Yeah, we talked a lot about Clint. So you can definitely go back and check that one out before next week's show. And because I think it's the next 3 are all Clint films, I'm sure we'll be talking about him a lot.
Yes.
I never thought when we started this podcast that it would be a Clint Eastwood podcast. But here we are. He's about to be the most featured person on Film Church Radio.
You're going to go back, your letterbox at the end of the year is going to be like, the actor you watch the most, Clint Eastwood.
I mean, if my wife makes me watch Harry Potter, it throws my stats off and it really annoys me. Because it's always like, your most watched actor was Robbie Coltrane. I'm like, what? No.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I forget what mine was last year, but it was someone that I was like, what?
Yeah, I think this year for me, again, another tangent, might be Kurosawa. I feel like I'm watching a lot of Kurosawa films this year. But yeah. So I think, do you have anything else you want to say on the Colossus of Rhodes? Run?
I think that's it on the Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was filmed in super total scope.
Yeah, that really made me laugh at the beginning because I was like, is that just like a knockoff of CinemaScope?
I mean, yeah.
And it is.
Yeah. The Italian
Super
version, but I was like,
scope.
it probably sounds really cool in Italian.
Yeah.
Like when you say it in
But
Italian.
super total scope sounds like a microscope that you got from the dollar store.
Yeah.
You know, just this terrible import from somewhere.
Cardboard.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, super total scope worked. It looked great.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
yeah. Well, awesome. That brings us to the end of the show. Like I said, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio, and me and Brandon are individually on Letterboxd. I am at Walkerlows3007, and Brandon is at Salmon Scope. And yeah, you can kind of keep up with what we've been watching. Follow us so that you can get all the ratings and reviews, all that good stuff. We have all our back episodes streaming. So yeah, watch along with us, especially at the moment. I mean, a 7-week course to know a master of film. Not too bad. I would say that's worth the free entry to watch these films. But yeah, that brings us to the end. Next week, as Brandon said, we will be watching A Fistful of Dollars. So make sure you've watched that before. But all that's left to say is, Brandon, do you mind if I get you another glass of wine?
Somehow I've lost my desire for wine.
Wow. The way you were standing and walking while saying that blew me away. Only you. Amen.
Amen.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.